My name is Sierra Dater. I am so grateful for all of you showing up here tonight. Growing girls is what we're going to be talking about, growing confidence in them. And I'm so delighted that each of you would take an hour to spend your time with me and to really put your girl on the front burner. And really to think about her today. So we're going to talk about 5 ideas on growing confidence. And I'm not sharing rocket science with you. These may be things that you already know, but I think it's really important to continue to revisit topics and to revisit just some ideas to help get them back in the front burner of our mind, as there's a lot going on in our world, and I know we're thinking about a lot. So one thing to keep in mind is that we can't make girls be confident. We can't actually make our girls do anything. As the most powerful and influential adults in their lives, we do have the power to influence. And so today, we're not going to talk about how you're going to make your girl be confident. We're going to talk about how you can influence, how through your own modeling, through who you are, and through some things that you can do and through some knowledge that you can build, that you can help influence your girl in being more confident. But ultimately, we can't make girls be confident. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about me professionally and personally before we get into the agenda. Personally, I've been a social worker for 20 years, nearly 20 years, not quite here. And I'm licensed in the state of California to provide therapy for youth, adults, and families. I also run a program called Wise Girl Workshops, which is a wellness program for girls that is right now for residents of California. However, I'm going to be offering it nationally come January 2021. And I'm also going to be doing some parenting coaching starting January of 2021. So that's professionally. Personally, I want to share a little bit with you about where I'm coming from that really helps influence my work, and I think may resonate with some of you. Because we're all parenting from our past. We're all parenting from our past. And so when I was growing up, I grew up on the East Coast with my parents that were together then, and my brother. And when I was in 2nd grade, we have this family story that is my parents, they would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I was in 2nd grade, I was like, I want to be a teenager. My parents just got like such a kick out of this. They thought this was like the funniest thing. And so they would like prompt me around their friends. And keep in mind, I'm like in 2nd grade. And their friends would be like, oh, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd say a teenager, and they would laugh and I would laugh, only I didn't really know why they were laughing because I was in 2nd grade, and but I love the intention, so you know I laughed too. But fast forward, I really did. I loved being a teenager, which might seem kind of strange. I loved the independence. I loved the freedom. I loved spending time with my friends. I loved like just sort of like living my own life. And I think even in 2nd grade, I just couldn't wait to get there. That's not to say that my teenagehood is wrapped in, you know, nice wrapping paper, that there's no struggle there, because I definitely really struggled as a teenager, and that's a big part of where my work comes from. There is a statistic that says between the ages of 8 and 14, self-confidence in girls drops by 30%. So between ages 8 and 14 drops by 30%. And that's a study done by Katie Kay, Claire Shipman, and Jill Ellen Riley, who wrote the Confidence Code for Girls. My plummet hit in 6th grade. 6th grade just happens to coincide with when I hit puberty. I get my period, and I woke up one day and I had this voluptuous body. And to be in 6th grade, to be 11, 12, 13 years old, to wake up and go through life with this voluptuous body at such a young age was really, really hard. I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience, or maybe you knew some friends who did, but to be in 6th grade and to have the attention of people who think you're 18 years old was really hard. What was also really hard was, and I also think that really, I grew up fast as a result of that in particular. I also had a ton of conflict with my mom in 7th and 8th grade. My mom and I fought what feels like every night. And when I asked my brother about that story, he was like, oh yeah, you guys were fighting every night, all night. And not like, it wasn't chill. We fought a lot. And fortunately, in 9th grade, things get a little bit better with my mom. I think maybe I just worn her down. And by later adolescence, which is 11th, 12th grade, things definitely improve with my mom, but there is definitely some struggles there. And I really could have used a lot more boundaries and a lot more limits. Now, with that said, I think my parents did the best they could. I know that they really love me, and I know that they were parenting from their past. For example, my dad grew up with a full-blown alcoholic father. My dad had no idea how to be a dad. Here he is as a dad, not drinking alcohol and trying to figure out how to do it on his own. It was hard. So we're all parenting from our past. I have a 10-year-old and I have a teenager, and some of the ways that I'm parenting them is around, I want them to grow up slow. I grew up really fast, and I want my girls to grow up slow, and I want them, I'm not necessarily like slow them down. I just want them to be like age appropriate. I don't want my 10-year-old to be 18, and I don't want my 13-year-old to be 18. I just want them to be 10, and I want them to be 13. And that's in part where I'm parenting from. I'm also parenting from this place that I want my girls to learn how to communicate in assertive and regulated ways. I shared with you, my mom and I, we fought like cats and dogs. I don't want that in my house. And if I have any control over that, I want my girls to learn that we can have conflict and communication without having to rip each other's hair out. Not that we ripped hair out, but that's what it felt like. That was the intensity. I also want my girls to learn that no means no, both for when they say it and when they hear it. Because no has been a struggle for me in my life, and especially as a young person, to be able to say no to things. And so that is in part where I'm parenting. So that's me. We are all parenting from our past, okay? You all, and the unique part, I think, about parenting from teenage land, teenage world, is that not only are we parenting from our past, from our parents, but as teenagers, probably all of you remember, have some sort of narrative about what it was like to be a teen for you. You remember that time in your life. Maybe you remember the good stuff, maybe you remember the hard stuff, maybe it was hell on earth for you. You know, we're all coming from this place of parenting what our parents gave us, and then also what we needed as teenagers. So growing confident girls stems in part from our past. How confident were you when you were a teenager? Did that evolve over time? Did you really struggle with confidence? Body image, what kind of messages did you get? Were your parents super strict that you're like, you know, for my family as an adult, I'm gonna give my kids less limits. Maybe your parents were not strict at all, and you find that you want to have a more boundaried sort of household. We're all parenting from this place. So I encourage you to think about a bit about that, about where you're parenting from and about what comes up for you tonight. When I invited you to come to this talk, I don't know if you read the fine print, I actually invited you to come to an experience. And I really want you to experience what we're going to talk about today. I want you to experience it with your eyes. I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to show you some slideshows. I want you to take me in, take each other in. I invite you to take it in through what you hear, to really listen deeply tonight and let it sort of filter in and not just hit the surface. Like, what is Sierra saying? How does this impact me? How does this relate to my girl, my family? And I also invite you to take it in through your body, okay? And that's why if you're just joining us, go ahead and grab a pen and a piece of paper. You're gonna need that today. You're gonna write down some ideas, take some notes. I want you to also check in, what are you feeling in your body as I bring up certain topics? You know, does your heart start to pound? Do you feel relaxed? Are you smiling? Do you feel tense? Do you feel worried? I mean, I've been running these webinars the last week, and our kindergarten parents, they're terrified of this teenage year, right? They're like, oh my gosh, like, what's it gonna be like? And everybody's worried about this time, and here we are, we're there, right? We're in this time. So let's get into the agenda. All right. So this is for grades 7 through 12. I know that is a huge age range. 12th grade is definitely different than 7th grade, but it is a period of growth and development. So as we look at things today, I just want you to consider it to be a spectrum. Wise Girl Workshops, I spoke a little bit about that. So the agenda for today is we're going to talk about a definition of confident. We're going to talk about 5 ways to grow confident girls. And we're going to talk about one thing you can do today to improve your relationship with your girl and help her to grow confidence. I'm really excited to share that with you. If we've got time left, we'll do a question and answer. And I also have an evaluation that I'd love for you to take. It's just a couple minutes long that can help inform me about what you're needing, what you liked, what you didn't like, all that good stuff. So I kept the definition really simple. Feel free to take notes if you'd like. I'll prompt you when there is something that I'd like you to write down. Confident from Merriam-Webster means having or showing assurance and self-reliance. And synonyms to this are certain, trustful, faith, secure, assured. These are all things that we want for our girls, right? We want them to feel this for themselves. For you, we want them to feel confident in the relationship with other people and, you know, ideally confident in the world, which I know might be a stretch right now. So the first idea that I'd like to share with you about growing confident girls is understanding her stage of development. When I have people come and talk with me, when my parents come and talk with me, this is usually the first place I start, because if we can understand their developmental stage, we can have reasonable expectations. Now, the tricky thing with teens is they start to look like adults. They start to sound like adults. They start wanting to be treated like adults. And that can sometimes fool us as parents because we may start to treat and act and talk with them in that way, which isn't to say you should be treating them like a little kid, but the expectations we have may need to be limited because of where they are developmentally. Because as we know, the human brain doesn't fully develop until age 25. So they are in a full-on brain development right now. We're going to talk a little bit about this. So here are some of, we'll get to brain development, but we're going to start here with some characteristics of this stage. You may notice some of these now. You might say, yes, this is totally my girl. This may be coming, or it might be mild for them. Okay, so for example, concerned about body image, looks, and clothes. Some girls aren't really interested in clothes. It just might not be their thing. But to a certain degree, they are coming into relationship with their body, looks, and clothes. They compare themselves to others and their peers when maybe you noticed when they were younger, they maybe stood on their own and didn't really care. You may find that they're starting to care or that they do care. Moodiness, anybody got a moody teen? I do. When I was making this program, you got it. Part of the stage, rude, short-tempered. Some of that's going to be about brain development. Interested and heavily influenced by peers. Okay. Less affectionate with parents. The beautiful thing about this one, I tend to notice, I can't make you any guarantees here, but when teens hit this stage, a lot of times they come back around if you have a house that has historically been affectionate, like they might have some time or like they don't hug or they don't want to be by you. But that tends to come around in later adolescence or when they get out of high school, you might see they surface back to that, which is just a lovely thing to have happen. More conflict with parents. Showing more independence from parents, more time with friends. There's a real draw for that. Increase in stress is often there's more academic demands. So if you can think about these milestones that kids go through, the transition, at least in the state of California here, I guess I should just speak to Petaluma where I'm at right now, and I realize it may be different depending on where you all are from. But the transition from 6th to 7th grade is a big transition. The transition from 8th to 9th grade is a big transition. And then it's also a big transition for some in 10th grade, but a lot for an 11th grade, because there's this real message, at least around in this community, that 11th grade, it's the year that counts for college, and you've got to be on it, and you've got to do well, and you've got to take the hard classes, and things are going to get hard. So stress is going to ramp up at these transition periods. There's an increased concern about the future. at least in this community, and I'm not sure what's happening now with COVID, but historically, when you hit 9th grade, you have a meeting with your guidance counselor, and they're gonna lay out the next 4 years with you. That's a pretty overwhelming experience for a lot of kids to go from like, oh, my grades, like, maybe they care, maybe they don't care. And all of a sudden it's like, you've got a plan for your future. So I've seen a lot of kids in my therapy practice who show up in 9th grade and are freaked out, super anxious about what's going to go down in 4 or 6 years for them. It's terrifying. So there's an increase in concern about that. There's an ability to think abstractly and hold complex thoughts. Up until about 6th grade, up until about 11 years old, they're thinking more concretely. They don't have the ability to hold abstract thoughts and to really like piece things out, plan things out, think ahead. That really comes with being a teenager. And can keep in mind that that is developmental, developing. So it's not that they hit 7th grade and they've got it, right? This is something that's developing over time. They have a sense of right and wrong. They might not always act on it, but they have a sense of it. There can really be black and white thinking, which can cause some conflict as a parent, because as an adult, you realize, and I'm continuing to learn every day, there is so much gray area in the world. And teenagers can be very absolute, like it's this way and you're wrong and I'm right. And that can be hard when you may see it differently. They can offer reasoning for their choices, including about what's right and wrong. There's an increased need for privacy, so really keep that in mind, knocking on their door. Pay attention if you're walking around nude in your house, maybe not as they get older. That's just in terms of your own value in your own household, but just to keep in mind for privacy. And I know that this can be a really hot topic when it comes to social media and their phones and how much privacy do I give. That's a talk for another day, but there is a need for some privacy. Body is continuing to change, and this can be a really confusing time for people, as I shared with my own story, but just also in terms of especially that junior high age where development is all over the place. You have girls who are extremely developed, girls who are not developed at all, and girls who are really developed can feel like, well, I should be 100 pounds because I was, but maybe 100 pounds isn't where they're supposed to be in full development, but their friend is, and it can just be really confusing about these body changes and the idea that our body, as we all know, is changing throughout our life. There's increased interest in love, dating, sexuality, and romance. Again, this is a spectrum. Some girls are just full on in this, and other girls aren't quite so interested, or maybe as development continues. Having a deeper capacity for caring and sharing and for developing intimate relationships. This includes both romantic relationships and friendships. They get really close to their friends. And this is actually one of the most heartbreaking periods sometimes for kids, for girls in particular, is when they have that friendship breakup, right? When they're not friends with their best friend that they've had forever. It can feel like, it can feel like one of the first romantic relationship breakups. I mean, it can feel that sort of painful. So romantic and friendships. During teen years, they might fall in love or may feel they're in love. They can feel a lot of sadness and depression. Issues with food can arise in terms of disordered eating, whether that's just sort of an issue with food or full-blown eating disorder that usually shows up during this time period. If it's going to, and that's certainly not for everybody. They have different brains than adults and children. Their brains are still developing. We need to remember that. Mental health disorders can start to emerge at this age and stage. A lot of times diagnosing doesn't come till earlier because teenage time can seem like kind of erratic. And so what may look like a mental health disorder actually may just be development, and they may grow out of it. But that's not true for all teens, unfortunately. Melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, it's increased later at night and drops later in the morning. And that explains why a lot of teenagers have energy at night and they're not tired, because melatonin, their natural melatonin, hasn't kicked in. And that can also be why it's really hard to wake teenagers, or why they want to sleep more, because the melatonin isn't kicking in until later compared to us adults. And they need about 9 to 10 hours of sleep. Certainly many teenagers could benefit from more. So I'm going to show you a video here. It's by Dan Siegel, who is just an amazing researcher, and he's got other titles. I won't claim to know what they are, but he's good. I'll just say that. Let me share this video with you here. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear it?
The adolescent period is absolutely amazing. People often give it a negative approach, saying, oh, it's a time where adolescents are going to lose their mind, or they're just immature, or raging hormones drive them crazy. These are all not only wrong, but they're myths that mislead us and actually disempower us. Whether we're adults or adolescents, they actually give us the wrong message, and they make it so there's nothing we can do. So what is actually the truth? The truth is that instead of raging hormones, what's happening is we have remodeling in the brain. In ways we never could have predicted, we now understand two big things are happening in the brain. Things you as an adult can support adolescents in developing well, and if you're an adolescent, you actually can use this to help your brain grow in an optimal way. What are those two things? The brain is pruning itself. So imagine that in childhood, you're growing like a tree and establishing all these branches, and all these leaves are growing. In the brain, that means connections among the basic cell, the neuron, called synapses, are being established, and you're soaking in the knowledge of the world, and that's beautiful. The tree is just growing, growing, growing. But then what happens, that surprised everyone, is the brain begins to prune itself. You start carving away some of those leaves, some of the smaller branches, even some of the larger branches. And the reason for the pruning is to specialize the brain. While the child is developing in ways that are really generalized, learning everything they can about everything they can, an adolescent is going to begin to find their passion, to actually find things they like, things they really love doing, and to drive their development in that way. So pruning is actually a use it or lose it principle underneath it. That if you don't use something, you're going to lose it. So if you like sports or like dancing or like music, do those things so you continue to establish those circuits. The second thing that happens in the remodeling adolescent brain is myelin formation. Myelin is a healthy sheath that allows connected neurons to communicate with each other in a much more effective way. How? It's 100 times faster, the signal that's sent down a neuron to communicate with another neuron, 100 times faster, and after it fires off, it's 30 times shorter the resting period that happens. 30 times 100 is 3,000. So when you've put down myelin, you've made your neurons communicate 3,000 times more effectively. That's a great thing. Now the great thing too is that you as an adolescent can actually use the focus of your attention to be aware of your emotions, aware of other people, to be engaging in activities, to be doing things with your thoughts that actually reinforce the parts of your brain you want to hold on to. So the good news about the remodeling story is that a field called neuroplasticity, how the brain responds to experience, shows us that what you do with your mind can change the activity and therefore the structure of your brain. So if you then come up with the statement that the ultimate goal of brain remodeling is to make an integrated brain, to differentiate areas, that's the pruning, and myelinate them, that's the linkage. When you increase differentiation and linkage, you make the brain more integrated. And an integrated brain is the pathway toward well-being. And you can do mind-sight exercises. These are exercises that increase insight, empathy, and integration. And if you do them as an adolescent, and you can also do them as an adult, you'll actually increase the integration of your brain as your brain is growing, not just during adolescence, but throughout the lifespan. And what's the outcome of integration? When integration is made visible, it's kindness and compassion. And so what we see through adolescent development is that our relationships become built on connections that are deep and filled with honoring each other's vulnerability, that's kindness, and supporting connections that are compassionate, filled with a sense of caring about other people and wanting to help them. This is the kind of world we can build as we move through life and support each other in our development.
When we can understand human development and we understand brain development as part of that, it can really help us to provide, to have some empathy and understanding for our kids. And when we have empathy and understanding for what's happening for them, we can just parent from a calmer place. So another thing about the brain that I thought would be important to bring up is that the brain's reward receptors are growing and increasing adolescents' response to dopamine. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter which is associated with feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, and feeling good. And so social media, I realize that many of your girls may have social media, maybe not all, but many of them. But social media taps into this releasing dopamine. So every like or heart or comment has the potential to release dopamine, okay? So the more we get, the more we want, and that's why we find that there's a real draw to social media. And the more we don't have it, the more we often try to get it, okay? So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take that pen and paper, and I'd like you to scale yourself. I'd like you to write down understanding human development, and I'd like you to scale yourself from 0 to 100, how knowledgeable you are about human development. 0 means I don't know anything about human development, and 100 means I know everything there is to know about human development. So I'd like you to score yourself. Where are you? And this is just a number for you. It's not a competition. This is just something you're going to be using at the end of our time together today. All right. The next idea that I want to share with you about growing confident girls is this idea of making room for who she is. Okay, making room for who she is. So we got to remember where she is at developmentally. She is pruning. Sometimes your girl is going to prune something that you don't want her to prune. Sometimes that can be devastating. She's played piano for 10 years. I love her playing piano. And maybe she's like, I'm just not down with it. I don't want to do piano. I don't want to do piano anymore. And that can be hard when we have been sort of invested in something as a parent and she is pruning, okay? But remember, that's developmentally appropriate, that that she's going to start trimming away things and refining. So areas to make room for. This one's easy. We can make room for her successes. When our kids are doing well, we make lots of room for them because it's easy. When they make mistakes, sometimes we don't make room for those. I know that you know that you're not going to have a perfect kid, but sometimes our expectation for our kid is to not make mistakes and to do things perfectly, even though we might be telling them something different. So we want to make room for mistakes. Mistakes are growth. They're going to grow from mistakes, hopefully. We're going to make room for their decisions. They're going to make decisions that we might not agree with, but we got to make room, because as we're going to talk about, our role is going to shift as a parent as we move into teenage years. We got to make room for their friends. This can be hard too. Sometimes we love their friends and sometimes we don't. And that can be hard when your girl is choosing friends that maybe you don't necessarily agree with. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later too. We want to make room for her failures, have a soft place to land. And we want to make room for her to grow. Sometimes parents don't want their kids to grow up. They want them to stay young or in a particular age, and we just want to make room for them to grow and blossom. So offering unconditional love and acceptance grows confidence. And the message that you're giving them, you're not going to hear your teen ever say this, but this is the message that they're going to be instilling inside of them. Even if no one else loves me, my parents do. When their friends turn on them, when they aren't invited to something, when they see something on social media that they are not a part of, that's going to be hard. But if you can offer unconditional love and acceptance, you're giving them this soft place to land and a place that, like, I've got you. And girls need that place from their parents that is, I've got you. Even though you get a lot of pushback in teenage years, they need this from you. So make sure that you're not just showing love when she's doing well in school or activities, Okay, they need love all the time. They need love when they're making mistakes. They need love when they're failing. Okay, and I know sometimes that can trigger us. We might not be able to show love when we're really upset because their Aries portal shows that there are 7 assignments behind. It's hard to show love then, but remember that they need it. So go ahead and scale yourself on a scale of 0 to 100. How are you doing at making room for who she is? I make room for her. 0, I don't make any room for her. 100, I give her all the room that she needs. The third idea I'd like to share with you is embrace your changing roles. Your role as a parent is changing, or has changed, depending on where you're at on the spectrum here of teenage land. So one of your roles is going to be a coach. You're going to offer, if you can sort of imagine a coach that you've had, some sort of athletic coach, debate coach, they're offering encouragement, they're training, you've done the training up until this point, and then you understand that she has to be the one to get it done. You can't go out on the soccer field with her and do it for her. So it's offering communication, cheering from the sideline. You've done a lot of training up until this point and understanding that she's got to go it alone sometimes. You're going to be her confidant. You're going to be someone she shares details with. Now, this isn't all the time, but a confidant is somebody that she's going to share, what do I want to say? She's going to share stuff with her friends, maybe a lot more than you, but there's going to be a time that she's got something that she's really going to need to share with you. And so you are going to be her confidant. And you may also find that you might be this for her friends too. I know one of my girlfriends really was drawn to my mom, and she couldn't talk to her own mom the way that she could talk to mine. And they had a pretty sweet relationship. Like sometimes she'd even stop over to just see my mom. My mom was a confidant for her. You're going to be a teacher and you're going to be a student. Sometimes you're going to teach your girl and sometimes you're going to learn. And oftentimes you're going to learn, right? And this is actually one of the things I love about teens is I love learning from them. There's a way that each generation becomes a little more evolved than the next. If you can think about your own relationship, maybe with your parents, you're probably a little more evolved than them. And your girls are going to be more evolved than you potentially. And I love hearing about how they're seeing the world, about what they're thinking about the world, whether I agree or disagree. I love learning from them. And so part of your role as a parent is going to be about being the student. You're going to be a collaborator. You're going to think about things together. You're going to let her lead, and you're going to ask her some questions depending on where she's going. So your role is to collaborate with her. It's not, when they're younger, it's like you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you're going to do this, and I'm parenting. Well, in the time of teenage years, we're going to want to collaborate. Okay, so what do you think about this? All right, let's think about how to do this together. Okay, let's think about, like, you know, what are your plans? Okay, well, let me ask you some questions about that. All right, we're going to collaborate with them. We're going to be a consultant around problem solving. We're going to be a consultant around future plans. When you are consulting, try and do it in the absence of yelling and arguing. Not always easy, I know. You're going to be an adult advisor. You are the most primary, you are one of the most primary people, the most primary adults in your child's life. And so you are modeling for them how to be an adult. And whether they agree with you or disagree with you, they are watching you. And you are also advising them on future plans. They're going to come to you about future plans and future ideas. And they're also going to be taking in about how you have lived your life in regard to their future plans. For example, I grew up in a blue-collar family. My dad really just hated his job. And I vowed in my life after growing up and seeing that, I was like, I'm going to love my job. Like, there's no way I'm going to live my life in this way of hating what I do for 8 hours a day. I'm just not going to do that. And so that really helped influence my future. You're going to be a supportive companion. So you're there when no one else is in a warm and loving way. Okay. And I know it can be hard as a parent. Sometimes we can feel rejected because we get a lot of push. But when we remember where they're at developmentally, friends are primary, family becomes secondary. Remember that that's just normal. That's where she's at. And we want to be there. We want to be that supportive companion, this message that she can hold inside for the rest of her life, that you've got a spot for her, no matter who she is, no matter how she's treating you, you've got her. That's an important message. You're going to be a boundary holder and a limit setter. And this is what I'm going to ask you to be always when it comes to unsafe behaviors. Okay, they're going to need limits, and they're going to need boundaries, and they're going to think that they've got it, and they're going to think they know it all. And this, this might be an area of conflict. This might be a fight here. But when it comes to unsafe behaviors, I just encourage you, this is a non-negotiable. Okay, their brains are developing. They've got those dopamine receptors that are really kicking in. This is a time of risk taking. They're going to need some guidance sometimes. Stay engaged and emotionally connected while simultaneously giving her more room and freedom. This is a delicate balance. How do I do this? How do I stay engaged and give her freedom? It's kind of a seesaw. It's a back and forth here about how to do that. Sometimes that's quite easy to stay engaged and emotionally connected, and sometimes it's not. The balancing act. Your other role is that you're a role model. They're watching you. They may reject the way that you're role modeling, but they are watching you. And your role also becomes, you might be called mom, you might be called mother, you might be called by your first name. They might try that on for a while, right? Kind of like it's a different relationship. I know I went through a period where I was calling my mom Mo. I mean, her name is Maureen. I still call her Mo. It's just the way it is. But that's a relationship. I didn't call her Mo when I was a young girl. So remember, the fact is you remain one of the most influential people in your daughter's life. So go ahead and scale yourself. How are you doing at embracing these changing roles? I'm not embracing them, 0, 100. I'm fully embracing them. Sometimes the role shift can be really hard. All right, number 4, encourage your girl to hang out with people, not just friends, but people who help her feel good about who she is. Okay, encourage your girl to hang out with people who feel good about who she is. So here are some tips for encouragement. Help her understand who these people are through curiosity and questioning and not judgment. Okay, don't put kids down, but you can point out why they aren't a good fit for your kid after she shares her views, okay? So you're gonna ask her about her friends. Who does she like? Why? Why it's important to her, or what's important to her in a friend? How does she wanna be treated? And this is where you get to come in. Well, does so-and-so have these traits and treat you the way that you wanna be treated? If you're just like outright, like, I don't like this person, I don't like the way they're treating you, you might get a lot of pushback because they might feel differently on a particular day because, again, moodiness all over the place, the up and down. So developmentally, girls are pruning and they're hot and cold. So who they like this week might change compared to who they like last week. So part of your task is just going along for the ride, and you might not be able to keep up, and you might not like her decision. Now, ultimately, if you feel that there is someone who is extremely unsafe, right, when we're talking about limits and boundaries, if there is someone who you feel is extremely unsafe for her to be around, then yes, limits, boundaries. It might be worth the fight. It might be worth the big deal. If it's somebody that you just don't necessarily care for, she's going to find her way with it, and you're going to go along for the ride. But you can encourage, rather than putting down her friends, ask her questions like, geez, like I hear you saying you really like to spend time with so-and-so, but every time you come back home from hanging out with her, I just notice that you're saying that she's being really cruel to you and she's ignoring you and just sitting on her phone the whole time. I don't know, is that how you want to spend your time? Right, so you're gonna ask questions versus like telling, okay? You're gonna collaborate. You're gonna problem solve together, okay? And then you want to help her find the threads in relationships, meaning the connections of those people who continuously treat her well or treat her poorly. So you're going to want to help her find those threads through questioning, not necessarily telling her. If you feel like she's oblivious, like she's not like understanding what you're saying, she has, you know, she's in that like, if she really sort of has a fantasy about how somebody is, you might want to use just some real life examples. Like, hey, I noticed that when you got off your phone yesterday, you were telling me you didn't like what she was saying to you when you were texting or Snapchatting. So using concrete examples can be helpful. The other thing when it comes to teens is I encourage you to encourage her to have connections with other healthy adults, okay? You being the only healthy adults in her life, the only modeling, is great, but she needs more because she is going to be transitioning into adulthood. So whether that's grandparents, whether that's aunts and uncles, whether that's family friends, whether that's another friend's mom that you trust, whether that's a therapist or a coach of some way, yes. So encouraging connections with other healthy adults. I had a couple experiences like this for me growing up. One was the school nurse at my high school. I had an internship, what is it called? Independent study internship. I went there every day and I just hung out with her. And she was an awesome role model for me. I really hashed things out with her. I really talked with her in a way that I wouldn't have talked to my parents. And I am so incredibly grateful for the 2 years that I spent like working, but just hanging out and really getting her guidance and influence. I'm really grateful for that. So I really encourage that for your girl in the teenage years to have some other healthy adults in her lives outside of you. So go ahead and scale yourself, 0 to 100. How are you doing at encouraging her to hang out with people who feel good about who she is? Do you have those extra adults in your life? Are you putting down her friends? Are you asking? Are you collaborating with her? Is this a source of tension? How are you? Scale of 0 to 100. All right, our last point here, modeling healthy coping skills. This is you modeling healthy coping skills. This is from What Teens Need Most from Their Parents, an article in the Wall Street Journal. Parts of the brain most vulnerable to stress are still maturing, right? Brain development here. So coping strategies teens use at this stage can become ingrained in the brain's circuitry as lifelong patterns, according to a 2016 research review in Developmental Science Review. Psychologists advise teaching and modeling self-soothing skills such as meditation, exercise, or listening to music. Here are some things to model. Here are some things to maybe add to your repertoire. Yes, I know it's easy to go home from stress, a stressful day, or to be at home in a stressful day and go for the bottle of wine, which is okay. And I want you to model other things for your girls. They need to see that there are other ways to cope than just grabbing that bottle of wine. I realize that that may not be something that you do, but I think that's a common thing in our culture, which isn't to say it's a bad thing, but we want to show her other things. Mindfulness, meditation, positive self-talk, put down your own phone, deep breathing, staying connected to friends, exercise, having rituals, living with intention. Teach her about what you're doing. She might not know that you get up before everybody, make yourself a cup of coffee and go enjoy the sunrise. She might not know that you journal. She might not know that you feel at night when you're anxious that you're doing some deep breathing, and you might choose to teach her about that. So help her with ways of coping. She is watching you. She is listening to you. And as much as you feel like she's not, she's soaking you in, and she's going to soak you in for the full 18, 19, however many years she's with you. Okay. So you really need to be teaching her healthy ways of coping. We all need healthy ways to cope. Can you think about how your own parents coped? What sort of modeling did you see? Because for my family, it was we sat in front of the TV and we numbed out. That's where I'm parenting from. I don't watch a whole lot of TV. I'm not saying I don't watch any, I just don't watch a whole lot. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for my family. That's something that I'm like, not so much. I don't want to cope that way. I want to cope in different ways. So go ahead and scale yourself, 0 to 100. How are you doing at modeling healthy coping skills? All right. So those are 5 ideas to share with you. Again, it's not rocket science, but it's things to put on the front burner here in your mind. All right, now we're getting to the juicy part of the program. I'm so excited to share this with you. I want to talk to you about one step you can take to improve your relationship with your girl. Look, this woman's so pumped. She's like, yeah, I'm going to improve it. All right, here's what we're going to do. You ready? Drum roll. You got to make it up. Look at your scale. What did you score? Where did you score low? What do you need to work on? What is one step that you can take starting today, starting tonight, starting when you wake up in the morning, that you can do to improve the relationship with your girl? Do you need to learn more about human development? Are you like, yes, this brain stuff, I want to understand more. I want to know what's going on for her. Gosh, I'm not doing a stellar job. I'm putting down her friends all the time. I need to change my attitude a bit. I need to embrace my role. I need to model healthy coping skills for her. I need to make room for who she is. Go ahead and write down one actionable step that you can take to help grow confidence in your girl and help improve connection. If you want to take it a step further, you can even address it verbally. So here's an example. Because we are giving our daughters so many messages by what we say, how we say it, what we do. I'm trying to do my best as your mom, but I'm not perfect. I'm learning every day how to do things better, and I don't always get it right. So thank you for being patient with me. And I want to let you know I hear and see you. I'm going to work on being a better mom by putting down my phone when you're around. There is nothing more important than you. So feel free to remind me if I'm staring at my screen when you're around. I will try and remember myself, but if I don't, then please remind me in a kind way. So listen, people, I actually talk this way. And I know that sometimes people will be like, oh, you were talking to Sierra, when parents go around and they use some of my language, because these might not be your words. So find your words, role play in the mirror about how you're going to say something to your daughter, write it down. And also, timing is everything. So if she's super pissed off, don't be trying this, okay? You want to do it at a time where it's that tender mom moment, whenever that might be, your first thing in the morning, before she even has a moment to spout off here, okay? Find your moment, find your timing. When you say something like this is the message that you're giving your girl. I hear you, I see you, I love you, you're worth doing my best for, you are worth trying for, it's okay to not be perfect. I am showing you how to make amends. You say, gosh, I'm sorry, I don't always get it right. Making amends is huge. That's another great thing to model, but that's a conversation for another day. So your actions and words can help grow confident